pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be here.
For those of you who don't know, this is Harry Halpin. He's the bigwig over at Nym. I can't wait to hear all about your project. As I understand it, it is a privacy-focused project, which I think is a really important, really poignant topic to talk about. So hopefully we'll get to dive a little bit into that today. But I just want to give you a moment to introduce yourself to the audience and just tell them whatever you think is important about you, whatever we should know.
Okay. Yeah, I've enjoyed your podcast, the one I've seen before, and I am just generally, I would say, consumed by the need to explain to people the importance of privacy. So, a lot of people if you really look at like what made Bitcoin interesting and big, is it really had two components. One component was that people were like, "Wow, this is amazing! What really gives this string of bits value is that I can send it to anyone. It can't be censored. It's decentralized. It's managed in a trustless way. I don't have to trust the Fed or my local bank which can be very problematic for lots of people. But there's another thing which made Bitcoin very important. And that was that people, at least when they started using Bitcoin, believed, and it ends up being incorrect, that it was to some extent anonymous.
Pseudonymous is the right thing, though, right?
Well, it's pseudonymous at best. At this point, there are companies which can do analytics on the blockchain, elliptic, Chainalysis. There's a huge industry which attempts to identify people's transactions. And for those of you who, for example, live in the United States, you're getting letters about taxes. They do typically know who you are. And they're trying to find out if they don't. And I think that's, the main thing is that the kind of ethos that gave birth to Bitcoin actually pre-existed Bitcoin. And it existed at this moment when the internet was still, I would say, sort of a new-fledged chicken. It was not fully formed. And when the internet was built, and I've had the pleasure of working for Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, and discussing this with Vint Cerf, the inventor of TCP/IP with Robert Kahn, and even discussing this with Bob Kahn, that when the internet was originally built, it was built for essentially university professors. And there was a classified version of the internet, ARPANET, which became MILNET, which then got taken away from the rest of ARPANET, which then became the internet. And so the part that was public, that me and you got eventually use, didn't have any encryption, and it didn't have any privacy built in. It was imagined to be used by for not really purposes where there's a lot of value or money on the line. Now, what actually happened is the web took off, and then we saw tremendous amounts of value coming through the internet. And today, most of us, our entire lives are mediated by internet-driven devices. And if we were going to turn the clock back, and if we were going to reinvent the internet in a way that was really respected our fundamental rights and our fundamental beliefs about how we should communicate, about who we are, we probably want to add in the ability to make it easy for anyone to surveil. And so the cypherpunks in the 90s, who were kind of cooking up a lot of the early designs of Bitcoin, they were working on this technology to try to make the internet immune from mass surveillance. And while Bitcoin got big, everyone forgot about these other kinds of technologies, anonymous network level technologies. So VPNs, Tor, and what Nym is working on, mixnets. So I used to work for the inventor of the web. I helped add crypto APIs to browsers. I did negotiations between Google and Microsoft and Apple and Mozilla. I was a research scientist at MIT. But when what became clear to me is that if I wanted to change how the internet worked, I basically had to ask for Google's permission. And then it became, the more and more I learned about web browsers, the more and more I learned about all the tracking that was done, about how easy it was to identify people, even when they were using anonymous proxies and VPNs. And so I said, well, look, I've only got one chance in life, and I could either build essentially digital rights management engines for companies like Google's, YouTube, and Netflix that basically prevents people from streaming video, which I actually quite a fan of. And I think after Corona, everyone, this should be a public good. And I said, well, look, could we build something which really made the internet actually resistant, impossible for enemy, even like the NSA, to surveil? I started working on it originally for the French government at a research lab called INRIA. And then we said, well, who really needs to be private? And, maybe if I'm just watching a video, I can sacrifice a bit of privacy. Maybe if I'm, talking to my friends on Facebook, I don't feel, but financial transactions, such as those given by Bitcoin, but not limited to those that include Bitcoin, have a high need for privacy. So I said, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start. We need to figure out how to build a privacy enhanced internet for everybody. But you have to start every path with the first step. So I got together a team of people that I love working with, and we started a startup called Nym Technologies, and we're trying to build this privacy enhanced internet, with the first step being taking Bitcoin back to its roots and trying to make sure that it's private, both on the blockchain level and this kind of lower level, that what we call the network level.
So, how would that work? Would wallet manufacturers be integrating Nym's functionality in some way? Like, how would I, as a user, I'm a crypto user, and I want to take advantage of Nym's functionality, this mixnet, this added privacy. What does that look like for me as a user?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not so hard, and that's what we've been working on for the last few weeks. You're actually, I think, maybe the first people to know, because it's not even it's in the public GitHub, but we haven't pushed it out. If you want to communicate to another IP address over the internet, the internet has full of IP addresses like 168.2.8.0.1, and I'm sending a packet. That packet has the IP address in a header, right? And that's how, and that header can be viewed by anyone. But if I want to disguise that packet, there's actually a standardized protocol to do so, to ship it to another IP address. And this is a protocol called SOX5. And it's used by Tor, it's used by a lot of VPNs, but it doesn't have encryption. It just ships your IP to another IP address. And that's what we do. We basically make it, and it's already in things like Monero's desktop wallet, and we got it working with Blockstream's Green wallet using Liquid BTC, and we even got it working with good old-fashioned Electrum wallets, which I'm sure most people who use Bitcoin at some point in their lives will use. We basically sort of say, rather than just send my Bitcoin to the whole internet with this peer-to-peer broadcast, I'm going to ship my Bitcoin while still being on my same machine to what's called localhost, a little bit of your computer, which is running a special program, and always has the same IP address, which is 127.0.0.1, and has a port. And you basically cut and paste that IP address into a proxy setting, which you may have done with a VPN, if you were setting a VPN, or if you were using Tor with a Tor browser. And then magically, all of your traffic then gets shed to the SOX5 proxy, and then bundled up and sent to this mixnet, which then takes the packets, encrypts them, makes them all the same size, and mixes them like a deck of cards before doing the broadcast, and therefore making you private. So on some level right now, how it works is you just have to cut and paste this address, this IP address, into wallets which support this kind of behavior. And any wallet that supports Tor already supports this. Now, what we're doing in the next phase is we're trying to make, because we want this to be invisible to use. We want privacy to be the default for everyone's transaction.
Exactly.
And for that level, we imagine it's going to run like a VPN, right? So I used to help run a VPN, and we had this really great setup where you either had a green flag or a red one. And you just clicked the on button. If you got disconnected, you automatically reconnected. And it made all of your traffic run through the VPN. But the problem is VPNs are kind of crap. You're just trusting the VPN provider, not hand over all.
Right? Is it going to be faster? Is it going to be better? Am I getting privacy? And do I have to give anything up to get that privacy? If the answer is no, then you got something, right?
Yeah, and it's a little complicated. So you don't have to give anything up, but you do have to be patient. You do have to make sure that the network grows. Like just in Bitcoin, people took a risk on Bitcoin. They said, I believe this Bitcoin is going to be worth something one day. Not worth much now, it's worth a few cents. Fast forward, less than 10 years down the road, it's worth thousands of dollars, right? So, and it's why is it worth $1,000? Because the network grew of miners. And we're doing the same thing. So, right now, if you want to make your Bitcoin transaction private, we have to, because there's not that many users, we have to add in fake traffic to make you more private because you can only really be anonymous
to
and
obfuscate for them, right? Yeah, got it.
exactly. And then we add a little bit of latency timing because if all the packets come in and come out in the same order, it doesn't matter if it's kind of a different IP address. An artificial intelligence based machine learner can easily figure that out.
It's a data point you don't want to give up, right? You don't want to just.
We don't give it the data point.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about mixnets and with Nym is that not only can we make it transparent to use, and we can give you privacy, which no other technology can give you, which is resistance to these kind of NSA level adversaries or companies that are watching large chunks of the blockchain space. Chain analysis was revealed to be running tons of nodes in order to capture data, I think back in 2015. Mm-hmm. What we can provide is that we can provide not only this kind of resistance to what we call global passive adversaries that can watch the entire network. What we can provide is we can say the more people that use the network, we can keep you anonymous and to the same extent while making the network faster, while making it fast as possible. And even right now on our, essentially our test net, which we use for testing, we can stream video. I did it this morning. It was great. I was a bit surprised. Now we couldn't stream it as fast as not using them, but it worked.
Is there a point? Is there a point where it will be as fast though? Do you think like a certain amount of node propagation?
There's always going to be. Whenever you're shipping an IP packet around, there's always going to be some delay if you're shipping it from one IP address to another IP address. That's just the laws of physics.
Of course, but can you make it like trivial though, like where it's small enough difference where no one really notices?
Yeah.
If you could get it to that point, then I think you really got something.
And that's our goal. And we have simulations which show we can get closer to that goal and even make that goal a reality. But what it depends on is it depends on more and more people join the network with high capacity mixed nodes. So just as in Bitcoin, you have miners and they write hashes and they're solving those hash puzzles, gives them rewards and puts things on the blockchain. So it's just like a competition for space on the blockchain. We have a competition for how many packets you could mix. And you're like shuffling them like a deck of cards, adding a little bit of delays. If you have enough cards, you put in some fake cards. And the more people that use the network, the less fake traffic you have to put in, and the less you have to speed to slow things down and add latency in a randomized way, because you have so much traffic going through the network that everyone can maintain the same level of privacy while minimizing and eventually taking to nearly what I would say imperceptible levels in the long run with more and more traffic and more people. So while the network, I think,
more people using the tool, right? Ultimately, so that's an area where maybe I could help because as being a wallet manufacturer, this is exactly the kind of thing that guys like me are looking for. We're looking for ways to add privacy to our end users. So so far, I'm liking everything I hear, by the way. So please continue.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in your way.
No, we want positive scaling. We want so the more users you have, the more private you are, and the faster it gets, and that's our goal. And why don't you tell me a bit about your wallet? Because wallets are something that we consider like the first people who will use it. Because people that use Bitcoin wallets, that experiment with other kinds of chains, these are the kinds of people that we think are highly motivated and interested in privacy. So I'd like to know why you're interested in privacy and what you're doing on a wallet.
Absolutely. I ran into the problem where I was a crypto power user since about 2013. I put my whole life into crypto. I decided I didn't want to have anything to do with the national system anymore. I removed all my money from banks. All my investments went into crypto, and I just decided to try to live in that world as best I could. And sure, it was great economically, given my timing, but from a technical standpoint, it was very difficult. I just found myself running into problems keeping track of things. Most wallets at that time didn't even have memos, so I had to keep written notes on what a transaction was for. God forbid I need to track like what I need to do for tax purposes, my business spending, things like that. It got very complicated. So I decided to start building a tool that would simplify that. So we started with an Electrum wallet, old school, right? And started to update it, make it an Omni wallet, start to plug in the assets that I think I needed to interact with the most. Also put in automated tracking and reporting, multi-factor authentication. Like I needed layer security because I was keeping substantial amounts of money in my wallets. And I realized like, oh, this is just like password protected. Most of them just have like a single layer that if you could get through that layer, I'm in trouble. So I decided I wanted to make something a little bit more secure, have some added layers that I could ratchet up for if I'm doing something deep, or maybe I only need a pin to access it because I'm only going to keep $100 in it. It's like a quick wet wallet that I'm just throwing money around. So I decided to put some money into making a wallet that suited my needs, that did all the things I needed to do. And one of the things that I realized we really need is a communications protocol to talk through these things. I need to be able to talk to a cryptocurrency address. So the first thing I did with our system was launch a network that has what we call the human registry, where I could get a human readable address that will also function as the identifier in whatever messaging system we put in, which I'm starting to think Nym could be a potential solution for us there. We're looking for the ability to talk to a address or a location as privately as possible, so that I could check before I send large sums of money to a cryptocurrency address. Like, hey, is it really you, Harry? Like, I'll ask you a secret question. We get into a conversation, and I think if we could solve private communications, then we could also have private transactions. And I think privacy is probably one of the most important issues today, because it is the civil right which underpins so many others. Where without privacy, you lose your right of free association, you lose your right of free speech. You suddenly become subject to a whole host of series and types of oppression. So I think you're right on the front lines here fighting this battle. And obviously, if there's anything I could do to help you, I want to do it. So I'd really like to, maybe offline or after this, or maybe even here, we could do it now. Maybe we could sell me. Use Nym. Why? I'm a wallet manufacturer. I'm going to be doing B2B white label deals for other projects. I'm going to give them all my tools. I don't want to keep my tools, right? I want to make it available to anyone I work with. There are lots of projects that don't have compatible wallets. Just use mine. I'll plug you in. Everyone could get a human readable address, and then anything else I built into it, such as Nym communications, Nym privacy. I just want them to get that as part of the deal. So, I'd love to hear more about Nym. I'd like to hear what integration is like, how difficult we could expect it to be. Like, okay, I have a wallet. I want to plug in Nym. Do I got to get the user to install something else, or can it just be come along with the package? They install the wallet, they get your functionality. Is it that simple?
Yeah, so maybe I'll do this one step at a time. So first thing, I really like that you've built your wallet based on your own values, which is you really want to disconnect from the monetary system. That's something that I admire. I personally haven't disconnected. But the reason I got interested in Bitcoin is because back in, I don't know, I think it was a little bit after you, 2014 or so, I moved because I got my job at MIT working for the Web Consortium, and I moved to like a hacker house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, across the river from Boston.
Very
And my friend who lived at the house, this adorable and utterly astoundingly intelligent lawyer who was a fellow at Harvard at the time, called Primavera de Filippi, she would only use Bitcoin. She refused to use any other transaction. She did it start as like a bet, and then she started to really like it and got really into blockchain stuff. And so I found myself having to help. If she wanted to purchase, I would, you know, I would give her cash, and she would send me Bitcoin, for example.
Mm.
And later that
Very
Bitcoin,
clever of her. Very clever of her.
yeah, later
She
actually,
onboarded you.
later that Bitcoin became worth quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then I spin it all. It all went to the startup, but nonetheless, that's how we got the startup off the ground. Nonetheless, when I saw that passion, and also the fact that she was like, "Oh, I'm so against using normal currency, fiat currency, that I will even go, I will shoplift. I will jump the turnpike into the subway rather than."
She sounds like an awesome person, by the way. She sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And then I was like, well, that's cool. That means that there's something really important going on. In the community, I found first I was like, oh, they're a bit much. I mean, I consider myself a sort of cypherpunk, a crypto anarchist. But I was like, wow, I'm interested in just privacy and encryption. And these people, they're building a whole new monetary system. That's something else. But then at the same point,
I mean, I think that's the logical solution, though, right? Like the current
yeah,
system's not speaking to us. We don't have a voice in it. We have to do the end around. We have to build stuff that makes them obsolete. We're not going to engage with the existing system. Say, hey, please stop spying on us. Please stop printing trillions of dollars and handing it out to insider groups. Don't play the game unfairly. That's never going to happen, right? We have to build a system in which the rule set requires people to play fairly and makes it hard to spy on us, and where we get our civil rights by default, not by fighting for them, right?
Yeah, and I think what Julian Assange actually said, and he's a good friend. I visit him in the embassy.
You're getting so
Uh,
many nerd friends, by the way. This whole conversation, you like nerd merit badges all over. The coolest
yeah, no,
answer, right?
I respect his work, even though I told him actually when I first met him in 2008, I was like, oh, you're just going to go to jail, and but he said something that was very important. He said that cryptography is the most important form of nonviolent resistance. And then when I I'm living in Europe as an American, and I see a lot of really well-meaning lawmakers who understand the problem of privacy and surveillance, and they're passing these laws like the General Data Protection Regulation, which basically mean well, but actually they're just ignored. They just lead to a web browsing experience where I have tons of annoying cookies I have to click, and web pages don't work everywhere. It's actually fragmenting the internet. And I think it's actually, Assange is right. And Snowden is right as well when he said we have to make things like NSA impossible by using cryptography. That cryptography is not only for financial transactions, but also it's a way to enforce human rights and our fundamental freedoms against oppression within a technical infrastructure of which is vital to our future existence, right? That our children will inherit. And so I thought, well, I could spend all my time lobbying, but instead I'm gonna try to build tech. I'm gonna try to think of new technical designs. I'm gonna research them, and then I'm gonna try to bring them to market. And I really respect what you've done because you also lived your values and built something which other people find useful and want to use based on this. And
That's where it
that's
starts,
that's
right? It has to start with you, right? If you're not moved by your own activity, by your own work, by your own career, then what are you doing, right? Like, so these are the things that are important to me. I think privacy is incredibly important. I'm not a privacy expert, which is why I appreciate everything that you're sharing today. I think it's really important. I think it's a topic that for some people they roll their eyes out like, oh, I don't have anything to hide. I don't care about my privacy because they don't realize how important it is and how it underpins so many of their other rights and their other privileges. So I think what you're building and the stuff that you're talking about absolutely has to be part of the infrastructure of the information age economy that's coming. We can't build a new economy and then just repeat all the same mistakes of the last one. And I think you're absolutely right. We have to make it so that it's not optional to violate someone's human rights. It's not like, oh, we're not going to spy on you. I mean, we could, but we're not going to. It needs to be impossible. It needs to be taken off the table. Someone's privacy and civil rights are not optional. It can't be something that someone can break simply because someone in a room signed the right piece of paper and got the right approval. Now suddenly your civil rights are gone. And that's currently the world we live in. Currently, there's all it takes is someone to wave a pen and all your rights seem to disappear. And we need to defend ourselves, and we're not going to do it through the regulatory system. We're not going to get the people who are victimizing us to suddenly start protecting us. So we need to protect ourselves. And I think the best way to do is innovative technology. So I applaud your choice. I think you made the right choice. I tried to make the same one, although I'm not as technically proficient or I don't have your experience, but I just have a drive or a passion to help people. And I think this technology will allow us to help people at scale. So if, for example, you were to give even just your subset of users privacy, we would call that a huge win, right? If just suddenly everyone in the Nym ecosystem said that they were more private today than they were before they used the Nym system or before they interacted with tools that had Nym integration, we could say that that would be a huge victory. So I'd love for us to continue unpacking this and make sure that people really understand just how important this is, like how easy it is to just lose all your civil rights because privacy is gone.
Yeah, and this is something which I think is not limited to any part of the political spectrum. So you may think that you're safe now. I currently live in Switzerland. It's a very nice country. It's incredibly peaceful. We don't even have, the corona has been dealt with in such a way that we don't have to wear masks and I go shopping. Uh, but our rights could be taken away at any moment. It is not impossible to believe in this current age that our government could become fascist. Any government could become fascist. That we could have world war. And so you want to build the kinds of tools that build the world you want to build and that defend you against the existing threats. And as someone, I didn't do my PhD in cryptography. I did my PhD in machine learning.
Very cool.
And machine learning is how much you can learn using mathematics from information, little bits of information that get leaked every time you do a transaction, and it ends up you can learn quite a lot, including about Bitcoin transactions. And so that's what got me interested in privacy, because privacy has two levels. On a human level, it's about making sure that I have the possibility to act to be free, to express my opinions, to do actions I want to do without having to censor myself because I feel like someone is watching me now or will be watching me in the future, or is, as Edward Snowden put, building a permanent record of me that can be weaponized against me at any time. And people do act differently when they believe they're being surveilled. And I think one of the reasons the Bitcoin community was so wonderful in the beginning is because people didn't believe they were being surveilled. And now there's probably some freezing going on because people are nervous about what the chain is recording could tell about them in the future. Mm. And then I think what is you have to speak to where people are at. And a lot of the discussions around privacy can be very theoretical. But what we're actually doing on a very technical level is you're just saying with any act you do, you are transmitting information. And an observer who you may not be the one you want to interact with, it could just be watching you, can learn things and information. But there's a set of technical techniques which can obfuscate, which can hide that information, which can make you appear to be similar to other people, to hiding in a crowd. And that's what a mixnet does for internet packets. And we have other technologies in the privacy space that do that stuff for databases, like differential privacy, by adding noise. And this is like a fundamental arms race, I think, between privacy enhancing technology surveillance. And I think the people who are invested in Bitcoin are the people that will decide whether or not we will end up in a world of total surveillance or have our privacy, our liberties, and our freedom. And it's really simple because for the first time, and this is a big deal, I worked in the Valley for ages. You were there, I assume, before as well. It was hard to raise money to make a company. You had to sell equity. You had to basically make an app that worked in the App Store with Google. You had to ask them for permission for everything. And what we really imagine is a Web3, a world in which everything is decentralized. People don't have to ask for permission. And that what Bitcoin's value has grown has created a whole new class of, to be honest, hyper-powered and often wealthy individuals who have the power by throwing their weight and their technological expertise and even their funds behind projects can actually do things that were previously impossible to do with technology. You couldn't build the internet without U.S. government funding from ARPA. You couldn't have built a lot of the infrastructure that Google has without the venture capital backing of Google's funders. But today, just via the power of Bitcoin, we can actually fund and create and scale companies which go against the grain. And so we have to speak to the users who will back these. And so what we've done in terms of integration, in terms of trying to integrate and make Nym a reality to people, and we first started talking to a lot of the Bitcoin people who understand what mixnets are. For example, Adam Back, who runs Blockstream, and people thought was Nakamoto, although he's not, obviously, but he's a very intelligent man, and he founded the first mixnet company in the 90s about privacy called Zero Knowledge Systems, or was an early employee. And so he knew what mixnets are. And so he said, well, look, this would be great. Can we integrate it against, for example, one of our wallets? When I gave a very theoretical presentation, he was like, you should go for it. And that gave me a lot of inspiration. And now we're trying to figure out what's the easiest way to integrate wallets. And so the first way to integrate is, if your wallet doesn't support Nym, is you can download our library and you can use that SOX5 proxy to just cut and paste that kind of number into your proxy status. Now, if your wallet, and Electrum supports this, which is great.
Fantastic.
If your wallet isn't based on Electrum, if you don't have those capabilities, and you also just want to ship something that's Nym enabled, and maybe you're not even interested in wallets, you also want a wallet plus a messenger. That's a really great idea. We don't have any good privacy enhanced messengers right now.
Working on it. So maybe you're going to help me. Maybe this is what's happened here, right? So we need privacy, we need messaging. I think I just want to clarify something for anyone listening. I think it's really important what you're saying is you're describing the front lines on a very important battle, not just for privacy, but for human rights, for civil rights. And people need to understand that is happening. And wars are not necessarily just won by soldiers, they're won by logistics. And what you're saying is because of the wealth, because we're riding on the top performing asset class in the world, is we got a shot at this. We got a shot at doing paradigm shifts. And I think it starts with privacy, but also obviously starts with capital, which is already happening, right? We're at another, the beginning of another bullish phase. The stock to flow model is pinging, right, saying it's time to go. Things are looking good, right? This will be my third cycle. I actually bought my first Bitcoin in 2010 and lost it.
Oh
And
wow.
lost it, 14 cents, and lost it all, right? So I think everyone has that first horror story they have where they interacted with it the first time and dismissed it. So that was mine. Unfortunately, I didn't get really back in until 2013, and that's when I realized I need to take this very seriously. This is life-changing technology. But that thing that you're describing, I think, is a war front. There's opposition. There's people that want to oppress us. They want to violate our privacy. They want to not have us have access to wealth and self-determination and self-actualization because it benefits them. There are groups that benefit from it tremendously, right? If we don't have any right to privacy, suddenly a lot of people can make a lot of money on that, and we need to defend ourselves from that. And I really hope that Nym is the solution. And at the very least, you have my sworn honor that I'm going to help support you, make sure you succeed, because we need some kind of privacy solution that is meaningful, that is easy to integrate, that we could actually get users to start using, so that we can shift to this next economy. Because I think we can't do it without privacy.
Yeah, so again, I think you're totally right. One thing you said is very important is that we're seeing capital formation. So, and eventually we want apps to ship with Nym. It's binding to our library, but that really demands that we really build the system out, which you can do now, but we really want to make it more performant, as we said, more scalable, more private. And that requires people putting skin in the game. And earlier that was impossible for lots of people because they didn't have any wealth. And what's happened is that capital formation always precedes the invention of new technologies. And this is the first time we're seeing global distributed capital formation. Anyone who was lucky enough to put in money in 2010 has, and is not flipped out.
Has not lost it or sold it when it touched $14, which like so many people did, right?
Exactly.
People were hitting the exit door, really early. And I remember watching it and thinking, I didn't know any better back in 2010. I barely knew any better in 2013. But by 2014, I was convinced that anyone leaving was making a mistake. Right? Like,
And yeah, I do think it's good. It's better always to hold unless you need the cash for something. Like I poured all my cash into my startup because I felt that was the right thing to do.
Guilty as charged.
That being said, if I had Bitcoin right now, I'd just hold it. Yeah. And the important thing to remember is that Bitcoin allows a distributed capital formation, which we've never seen before in human history. And this may be our one chance to really change the trajectory of technology, not by depending on the powers that be, not by depending on governments, not by depending on charity, which will never really work, not by depending on, I don't know,
the existing infrastructure supporting its own disintermediation. We're basically asking, hey, Wall Street, give us money so we could disintermediate you, please. And it's always an uphill battle, right? It comes with caveats. They start talking about how can we cage the system. Oh, please do KYC AML compliance so that 6+ billion people actually can't even use the thing you're building. So suddenly it becomes really isolated. You're working with a niche market. I think open permissionless systems have to be the future, right? We need to get the other 6+ billion people who don't have access to what we consider good, stable banking and financial systems into the system. And I think if we did it so where they're also getting privacy, and for my part, my whole thing is I also want them to get a share of the economic value that's created from them entering into that market. When people come in and Metcalfe's law starts kicking in and you start to get these value multipliers, we need to have a really serious talk about who gets that money, right? Like right now in the Bitcoin community, people who are hodling, right, we get most of the money. But what if users and people who are actually like building things and participating in the building out the ecosystem and making it healthy, what if we had some consideration for all of them? What if we had an inflation and distribution policy that was a little bit more elegant, that said, yes, we realize the infrastructure, the miners are very important. Without them, there's no network, right? But what if we came up with a more elegant solution and started to parse it out and say, well, we're also going to put 10% for this or 20% for that? And I'm looking forward to a future in which we have ethos-led economies, where like the reason I'm operating in this economy, the reason I'm putting my wherewithal and productivity, and the reason I'm giving it my economic inputs is because I know 10% is going to remove the plastic from the Pacific Gyre every year, and I can see it happening, and we're tracking it, and so I'm willing to put my life on the line and put that 40 hours a week and do whatever is necessary to float this economy, which is what you do to the U.S. economy when you work every day, right? Because I believe in it, because its monetary policy matches my own internal compass. and therefore I could work and put my productivity to it wholeheartedly, knowing that I'm going to support something meaningful, which I can't do with the U.S. economy. I can't do with any national economy that I know of.
No, I
So
mean, I don't feel like I can, in good conscience, and I've left the United States. I've lived overseas for many years. Support the United States government in their endless wars, in their repression of whistleblowers. And I'm
which,
not
by the
going to
way, is
say,
patriotism, in my opinion. That's the truest, staunchest patriotism, is to look at your own country and say, there's some serious problems with this. I don't like where this is going. How can I contribute towards fixing it? And I feel like Nym is a good example of that. If you're working towards
exactly.
privacy, you're doing the right thing.
And I'm a strong believer in the right the rights of that were inscribed in the Constitution, but now we have to inscribe our rights on the protocol level because the world has changed. The era of the nation state is slowly dissolving. We're seeing the United States have all these problems. We're seeing global economic collapse, global instability. And at the same point, humans over the internet are increasingly more communicating more and more, becoming more and more borderless. And while for a long time the borderlessness was restricted to only a few elite individuals and only the capital, not the ordinary humans, we're now seeing the formation of transnational communities, which I think really have revolutionary potential. And thanks
Distributed
to
nation
Bitcoin,
states.
now have a form of money. That's pretty astounding. If you think about world historically, the internet has a form of money, and that's post national.
Yeah.
That's
Well, we're talking about
wow.
distributed nations. We're talking about information age nations, right? Like the definition of a nation state is a group of people that all use the same money, right? If they're all using the same currency, that's the only unifying factor now. It's not religion, it's not language, it's not genetics, skin color, anything like that. It's not even culture to some degree. It's just that they use the same money. So if we get people globally using the same money or a similar money or something that shares their ethos, those are essentially small nation states, right? Distributed nation states where I'm joining your economy even though I'm still in the United States. I agree with the economic policy of Sweden, so I'm joining Sweden without going there. That's kind of what you could do with an information age economy. That's what I did for myself living in Hawaii when I just switched all to the crypto economy. I was essentially exiting or shorting the U.S. economy, saying I don't want to be part of this, so I want to be part of this one. Even if you just did that for self-interest, I think that is a tremendous thing. But I think if you do it for the right reasons, for philosophical reasons, that you'll fare much better, right? Because people who do it for self-interest can't really handle the volatility, right?
Well, no, definitely. I mean,
They shake them off. You shake off. They become a weak hand. And thankfully, I was able to get through some of the hard phases and really just stay with it. But I think the reason for it, I think the reason guys like me or you, and hopefully thousands of others, are really involved in this technology and this industry is because they see the potential and they're doing it for the right reason. It's not about money. If it was about money, I would have retired in 2017. I definitely would have retired in 2017.
why would I have done a startup? I just would have, kept
Exactly.
working at a cushy research job or whatever, and instead I'm willing to give myself to the cause of privacy, willing to do everything in my to make it real. And what I think is important to remember, if you look at the grand scope of human history, that we've had these eras of plagues and disease, similar to COVID-19 before, many times.
Mhm.
Often at the very moment empires are collapsing and falling. There's, for example, the Antoine plague at the end of the Roman Empire. And during this period, there became forming new communities within the collapse of the old order. And the fall of the Roman Empire, they were monasteries. And there's often this is something which people don't really realize about the formation of monasteries, which then later led to the formation of the church or the modern nation state and the current global order, which is now broken, we inherited. And that's it wasn't the crazy people that went there. It wasn't the rejects of society. It was actually the best people. It was the most intelligent people. It was the people that could see the collapse coming. That decided that we were going to
Crisis is
try
an
to.
intelligence test ultimately, right? A crisis is an intelligence test ultimately, and that's what we're in the middle of, a really tremendous one, and it's technological based. So I'm sorry, continue. You were saying about the transition with the Holy Roman Church, that this it was the best, the creme de la creme of society were the ones that
Yeah,
were driving the change, right? So
and then when crisis hit, which it inevitably does, it's a part of capitalism. It's a part of history. When crisis hit, it creates chaos, and chaos is very scary. And we need to build tools to help us survive this chaos. But also, as a friend has said, chaos is a ladder. It gives us the opportunity to build new kinds of lives. systems, new kinds of systems to renew our values. And that's what I personally, our team during the Corona crisis, we said, well, look, price of Bitcoin just, I didn't forget, it went to like 3K or 4. I mean, it just
3,500
collapsed.
was like around 3,500 was the bottom this cycle, and yeah.
Yeah, people, but we said, look, we're just going to keep building. We're going to build this because we believe in it. And now, we held strong and now the market's back. And I'm sure this will happen again and again.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is that it gave our team time to mature our work. We actually, I think, worked harder because of less distractions due to everything
I
being
mean,
locked
we're
down.
experiencing that certainly, certainly.
Yeah, and now, I'm proud of where we're at, and I think we just reached the point where things that you're talking about, this messenger, for example. So currently for messaging, I use Signal. It's a fine encrypted messaging app. Moxie is a good friend, and I trust him a lot. But it is nonetheless doesn't resist, for example, traffic analysis.
Mm.
And so he's interested a little, and he's expressed some interest in our mixed network. And then we also have even when Bitcoin first happened, it's a funny story. I was on I watched a cypherpunk mailing list,
Mhm.
and I asked a friend of mine called Ben Laurie. I was like, do you think this Bitcoin thing? Do you think it will hold water? Because you know a lot about security and crypto. For a while there, he was the head of security even at Google. And he said, no, it'll never work. We know proof of work doesn't work. And then it did work. And technically, Ben's arguments are not entirely unfounded. But what Ben forgot was that, and this, and I wish I had known, was that it's not just technology, it's the power of the community.
Mm. People.
And seeing that even under these really difficult times of corona and plague and crisis, what's remarkable is the community around cryptocurrencies is coming together even stronger, and all of the digital isolation that we faced has made the need, I think, for privacy, and particularly privacy enhanced crypto wallets, privacy enhanced messaging apps, even like more apparent. We've actually seen interest increase during Corona
Crisis
rather than.
equals opportunity, right? This is the opportunity. So give me some dates. Tell me when's NIM going to be ready? When can we actually start using it? When do you want people to start paying attention? Like, what's the marketing cycle look like? What's the dates?
Yeah, you can use it now.
Awesome.
It's in what we call testnet mode,
Mhm.
is because we're a very small team and we haven't thoroughly debugged it, so we don't want you to put your life on the line using it
But
yet.
someone like me could use it right now. I want to test it out and get a feel for what you guys have got cooking, or maybe my tech
Yeah,
team. I'll send my tech team to go play with it. That's always
yeah, you
easier.
go to our website, which is nymtech.net. And we have, of course, if you go there, you can find our Telegram channel and our Twitter and all that great stuff. And you go to nymtech.net, you hit docs, and you see the documentation of installing and running a node, and for integrating your node against what's called our, as I said earlier, our SOX5 proxy, which then basically ships our network traffic into the encrypted
So when you aiming for
channel.
full launch though, what's the big like? I'm trying to give you a
Yeah,
chance to plug. I want everyone to get in.
well, I think it depends how, we were actually discussing this issue today.
Mhm.
Part of us is like, we should keep some of the systems centralized and just launch now, so we can see the community grow and build.
Do the transition to decentralized with
And
the
the
rest of
other
them.
is, should we hold off a bit, and should we have a more carefully planned transition? We're still debating.
Hmm.
I think we have a more carefully transition debating. You'll see a mature launch, I would say, early next year.
Good.
And we're going to launch several pieces in the next few months that will make it easy to integrate. We're going to launch our validators so that there's not a centralized consensus about who's in and who's out in the network. We just launched the SOX5 proxy. We would like to build increased censorship resistance. So this works, our software can work. The first hop can resist, for example, deep packet inspection. And this is very difficult, but luckily the Tor project has built some wonderful tools like obfuscation proxy, obfuscation proxy 4 we're looking into. And we also want to make the user experience better and better on wallets. So hopefully we'll try to launch some more integrated wallets. And some of the real legends of the space, who you should definitely invite on your show if you have time, like Amir Taki. He was one of the first
I
people
remember
that.
Amir. He's great. He's an awesome dude. Yeah.
He's an awesome guy. When I met Amir, I forget when, it was really funny because, it definitely seemed like Amir had the big vision, and Vitalik was just a kind of sidekick that was hanging out or working on a magazine, had some crazy idea for Ethereum. And it's true. Amir was the first person, at least that I met, that said, "Look, Bitcoin, this is going to change the world, and it needs better privacy." Uh,
I mean,
now,
he did some legendary TV interviews that I used to send to people where he was just really toeing the line, saying like, "This is going to change the world. You guys really need to pay attention." So
yeah,
I would love to talk to Amir sometime. He's become somewhat of a controversial figure last I checked, but generally
yeah,
speaking, he's seems really brilliant. It seems like he really got his finger on the pulse of things. So uh,
he's very he can speak in a way which often does anger people,
mm,
but he was the first person to recognize privacy issues on the Bitcoin, personally recoded Bitcoin from ground up in the Bitcoin, which most people forgotten, which is a very important piece of code, and put his life on the line, helping the Kurds and fight ISIS in Syria. So you got to give the guy
yeah,
props.
that's what I noticed. He was doing some really amazing stuff. I mean, which I feel like people may have felt confused by at the very least.
Well, I think fighting radical jihadism is something that I support.
You can get behind, right? You can get behind, right? Yeah.
It's something that not everyone may want to do right now, but I think we should support those wholeheartedly that do it, and that's I still very much support the Kurdish struggle.
Mm.
The and then he's building stuff. There's a lot of people who have who would like to build on top of Nym, and I don't know exactly when it's going to be 100% ready, but I can say the building is going on now. We should expect increasingly more and more products to ship with it. And I would like to sit down and work with your tech team to make sure we make that integration process simpler for you.
Yeah, I would love to know what that's like. I'll put you in touch with our CTO, Steve. He'll love to hear everything you got to offer. Privacy, again, is very important to us. We want to make sure that we're giving our users the most privacy options that are available at the market and whatever the best is available. So we'll definitely have that conversation. Maybe we can make plans to have you come back. We can have another talk like this. We could get updates, especially as you get near full launch. I definitely want whoever's listening now to be able to check back in with you, get an idea about what the Nym project's doing, if it's going to be really deliver on privacy, or maybe even go above and beyond what we might even hope. um, most of what I'm seeing and most of the feedback I'm getting about the project, it was really amazing. So I thank you so much for sharing all this time. We're starting to come up on the end here. Was there anything else you wanted to share before you go? Anything else that you think we might have missed today, though?
Yeah, I would just say that for anyone who's looking for um, a way to contribute,
Mm.
that we are all, to a large extent, fingers of the same hand. In theory, we can work together to build a more privacy enhanced internet. There's a large amount of often not particularly well known knowledge from the field of what's called privacy enhancing technologies, from the work of the original cypherpunks. That I would like more and more people, particularly people who are heavily invested in crypto, to invest in whatever way that they can, either with their financial backing, with their technical expertise, with their ability to their spiritual power, their ability to write, their ability to connect people. We need it is going to be do or die time for the human species in the short term, not necessarily even within the next 5 to 10 years, and we are at a very special point in human history where we finally have the capital formation and the technology to really change the world, and it will be a tragedy of unbearable proportions if we don't. But if we could go through to the other side, I do think the coming generations will be thankful. And this is includes everything from Bitcoin wallets, which can do all sorts of identity information and but do this in a privacy respecting way to allow people to have financial freedom, to tools for communication, to even stuff that we have barely touched on, like how do you prevent the internet from being censored when ISPs are shut down, the internet's blocked. And I want young people who would be otherwise tempted by maybe a job doing just quant trading for whatever, Goldman Sachs, or just working on advertising for Google, to really think big, to really think larger than this, and know that we are out here and we are willing to help you. Please get in touch.
What an impassioned rally cry. I'm one of them. I'm with you. Count me in. If we could get as many people working in cooperation and interoperability with this idea that we're not competing with each other, we're working together and competing with the old systems. And I think that was a really common perspective at the beginning of the industry that has sort of become diluted. This idea that it's not about one project versus another. It's not about one crypto versus another. It's about all of us versus the old system, and we
Exactly.
need to make it interoperable, and we need to make it seamless where we're one meta system, a system of systems that doesn't fight for market share, it doesn't fight for resources, but instead shares users, it shares resources, it shares information in such a way where we could have a posture to defeat the old system, where we could free ourselves, unmoor ourselves from it, make the debt of the past something that doesn't matter anymore, right? We got trillions of dollars in student debt. Wouldn't it be fun to enter an economy where that wasn't even a thing? It just didn't exist in this economy. We just self jubilee by moving on to another economic system and never interact with a single thing from it. No bank, no ATM, nothing, no Visa, MasterCard. Just leave it all behind and move on to this new economy in which we get to write the rules. And I think that that is the real opportunity here: non-national digital money in which we have a voice, in which we could be heard. And I look forward to seeing the thousands of other projects we're going to see and finding ways to interconnect them. And I hope that Nym ends up being a part of that layer, that base layer protocol of the new internet, right? That
Well,
privacy
we're
layer.
hoping to, and I'm going to definitely. This has been an awesome conversation. I got to express a lot of things that I haven't expressed before, maybe as much as I did here. And we'll definitely be tracking the podcast and your wallet work, and hopefully working together in the future.
Yeah,
So,
and when we get a chance, let's chat more about what we're doing. Well, maybe we'll put our teams together because I am very serious about Nym integration. That is something I will do if I think it's going to be good for the end user and if I think it's not too heavy a lift to put it into the system. So
yeah, it's early days, but early days is when you want to be there.
precisely.
So,
So yeah, let's start walking together. All right.
exactly.
Harry, aloha. Such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for telling us about your great project. What was the website again? Let's say one last time before we go.
It's Nym Tech, NYMTECH.net, nymtech.net. And just give us a look at the website. All the rest of the data is there. I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm, you know, I'm behind the Twitter. I'm answering email. I'm in the Telegram chat. And yeah, like
Awesome.
I think it's now or never, and I look forward to working with everyone here more.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for fighting the good fight, for working towards privacy, and for sharing your time with me. I
We
look
try
forward.
our best. Rock and
Awesome.
roll.
Aloha.
See you.
Bye bye.